Evelyn moved gracefully between the tables, greeting guests, making sure the glasses were filled, and that the laughter in the room never died down. The dinner party was hers, though Marcus, her husband, would claim otherwise. Their home gleamed with expensive taste, crystal chandeliers, silver cutlery, fresh roses on every table. Evelyn wore a deep blue gown that complemented her calm beauty. To everyone watching, she seemed the perfect hostess, the perfect wife. Marcus, tall and confident in his black suit, tapped his glass with a spoon. The crowd hushed. Guests leaned forward, expecting a loving toast to his wife. It was their anniversary party after all, a night meant to honor their years together. Evelyn's smile widened as she turned toward him, her heart bracing for something tender. "Ladies and gentlemen," Marcus began, his voice smooth and commanding, "thank you all for being here tonight. I stand before you not only as a husband, but as a man who believes in honesty." A ripple of warmth filled the room. People nodded, glasses were raised. Evelyn felt her chest swell. Perhaps, for once, Marcus would give her the recognition she had long deserved. He cleared his throat. "For years, Evelyn has stood by me. She has been loyal, supportive, and dedicated." But, he paused, his lips curving into a smile too sharp to be kind, "I can no longer continue in this marriage." The room froze. Forks clinked against plates, then silence. "I have found someone else," Marcus said with confidence. "Someone who brings me joy and passion again. Her name is Clara." He gestured toward a young woman seated at the edge of the room. Clara, dressed in a shimmering gold dress, looked down shyly before daring to lift her chin, as though claiming her victory. Gasps echoed around the hall. Murmurs rose like waves. Friends exchanged glances, relatives whispered furiously, and Marcus's colleagues stiffened in their seats. Evelyn felt the floor tilt beneath her. Her vision blurred, but she did not faint. She did not cry. The humiliation pressed heavy on her chest. Her marriage, her dignity, all stripped away in front of everyone who mattered. Marcus's announcement was not a private betrayal. It was a public execution of her pride. For a moment, she stood motionless, her hands gripping the edge of the table to steady herself. Her heart raced, her throat burned. She could feel every pair of eyes on her, waiting for a reaction, waiting for her to collapse, scream, or run. Instead, Evelyn inhaled slowly. She lifted her chin, turned her face toward Marcus, and gave him a small smile. But it was not a smile of defeat, nor of forgiveness. It was cold, calculated, and sharp enough to cut through the heavy silence. That smile unsettled him. For the first time that night, Marcus blinked, his confidence flickering. The guests did not understand. They saw only a woman betrayed, a wife humiliated. But Evelyn's smile told a different story, a secret one. Deep inside, she carried something Marcus had never imagined she would. Something powerful enough to turn this night of shame into the beginning of his downfall. She sipped her wine, her eyes never leaving him. The room buzzed again, filled with whispers and disbelief. But Evelyn had already decided. She would not be destroyed tonight. She had a weapon. And soon Marcus would know it. Smart, resilient, and patient. Those were words people often used to describe Evelyn. She was the kind of woman who held herself with quiet grace, even when life pressed hard against her. For years, she had lived in the shadow of Marcus, her husband. He was the shining star, the ambitious executive with a future that promised more wealth and power. Evelyn had once been full of dreams herself. She loved literature, wanted to write, and had even been offered a chance to pursue her studies abroad when she was younger. But when Marcus proposed, she believed in him, in their love, and in the life they could build together. So she sacrificed her path to help him build his. She became his supporter, his anchor, the one who kept their home steady while he climbed higher and higher in the corporate world. She managed his schedules, entertained his colleagues, and made sure he never had to worry about small things. She thought her sacrifices would be honored, that Marcus would see her as his equal. Instead, the more he succeeded, the smaller she became in his eyes. Marcus was charming to everyone else. In public, he wore the perfect smile, said the perfect words, and made people believe he cared. But at home, he was different. He dismissed Evelyn's opinions, mocked her dreams, and treated her as if she were only an accessory to his success. He wanted her silent, graceful, and available when he needed to show off the image of a perfect marriage. His eyes, however, had begun to wander. Clara was young, beautiful, and eager. She saw Marcus not just as a man, but as a ticket into a life of luxury and influence. Unlike Evelyn, Clara had no history of sacrifice with him. She only brought flattery, admiration, and the thrill of youth. Marcus, with his ego hungry for attention, fell for it. What Clara lacked in depth, she made up for with ambition. She wanted his wealth, his name, his status, and Marcus was blind enough to give it. Evelyn had seen the signs long before Marcus's public betrayal. The late nights at the office, the sudden need for privacy with his phone, the faint scent of perfume that wasn't hers. At first, she buried the pain, convincing herself she was imagining things. But Evelyn was no fool. She began to watch carefully. She studied Marcus not as a wife desperate to hold on, but as a woman preparing for what might come. She noticed something beyond his affair. His arrogance wasn't just poisoning their marriage, it was spilling into his work. Marcus believed he was untouchable, and that made him careless. Evelyn heard things, noticed details during his phone calls, and caught fragments of conversations he had with Richard, his powerful boss. They spoke about deals that didn't sound clean. Bribes disguised as gifts. Money moved through hidden channels. Numbers shifted on reports. Marcus would laugh about it, confident that no one would ever question him. Evelyn kept her silence. She nodded when Marcus brushed past her. She smiled at his colleagues, and she played the role he wanted. But inside, she was making her own plans. Quietly, she began recording. Every careless word Marcus spoke at home, every hushed conversation with Richard that he thought she wasn't listening to, Evelyn captured. She stored them safely, hidden away where Marcus would never think to look. For Evelyn, it wasn't just about revenge. Marcus had already wounded her deeply by dismissing her as unimportant, by taking her sacrifices for granted. But the betrayal with Clara cut into her very identity. She wasn't just a wife being replaced. She was a woman being erased, stripped of her dignity in front of the world. That was something she could not allow. Her sister, Leah, often reminded her of her strength. Leah worried about her, encouraged her to walk away quietly, to save herself the pain of fighting Marcus. But Evelyn's quiet strength ran deeper than Leah understood. This wasn't just about leaving a man. It was about reclaiming her life, her name, and her worth. Evelyn's heart still carried pain, but her mind was sharp. She knew Marcus thought he had all the power, but power can be fragile when built on lies. With every recording she saved, with every note she wrote down, she built a shield for herself, and a sword if she ever needed to strike. The world saw Evelyn as the wronged wife, a woman humiliated by her husband's arrogance. But they didn't know what Evelyn knew. They didn't see the quiet fire behind her eyes. Marcus thought he had ended her story with Clara. He didn't know that Evelyn had already begun writing the next chapter, one where she was no longer the shadow, but the force that could bring everything crashing down. The affair is no longer a private betrayal, it's public humiliation. What Marcus did at the dinner party was not just a confession. It was a declaration meant to strip Evelyn of her power. He stood in front of family, friends, and colleagues, announcing he was leaving her for another woman, as if Evelyn's years of sacrifice could be dismissed with a single speech. The sting of that night lingered. Evelyn replayed the scene over and over in her mind. The gasps, the whispers, Clara's smug glance, and Marcus's confident smile. She felt rage boiling inside her, rage so sharp it made her chest tighten. Then came the heartbreak, a heavy ache that left her lying awake at night staring at the ceiling. Shame followed, the kind that burned whenever she thought of the pity in the eyes of her guests. People avoided her now, or worse, they pitied her. Neighbors whispered. Old friends called with voices too sweet, too careful, as though she were fragile glass about to shatter. Evelyn hated it. She was not weak, and she would not let Marcus define her story. Her sister Leah was the only one who spoke plainly. Leah sat across from her at the kitchen table one morning, her voice steady but soft. Evelyn, you don't need to fight him. Just leave quietly. Take what belongs to you and start fresh. Don't waste your strength on Marcus. Evelyn listened, but her silence was heavy. Leah reached across the table and held her hand. He doesn't deserve another ounce of you. Walk away, Evie. But Evelyn's eyes held a different fire. She shook her head slowly. No. Leah. He humiliated me in front of the world. He made me small. If I walk away quietly, then he wins. And I refuse to let him win. When Leah left, Evelyn sat alone for hours, her mind turning like a storm. She pulled out the small black device she had hidden for months, her recorder. With careful hands, she replayed the files she had saved. Marcus's voice filled the room. Confident, careless. Richard, the money's already moved. No one will ever know. The numbers are covered. Another clip followed. Richard's low laugh. As long as the board believes the reports, the merger goes through. And Marcus, you'll get your promotion. Evelyn closed her eyes, listening not just as a wife but as a witness. These weren't just secrets of betrayal and marriage. These were crimes, the kind that could destroy Marcus's career and reputation. He had thought himself invincible, talking freely in their home, never once thinking Evelyn might be paying attention. Her heart pounded. She had always kept these recordings as a shield, something to protect herself if Marcus ever tried to push her too far. But now she saw something more. This wasn't just protection. It was power. Evelyn paced the room, waves of emotion crashing over her. Part of her wanted to scream, to march into Marcus's office and throw the recordings in his face. Another part of her longed to crumble into Leah's arms and let someone else fight for her. But the strongest part, the part that had survived years in Marcus's shadow, whispered a different message. Be patient. Be smart. Fight on your terms. She thought of Marcus's words at the party, how he had framed everything as his choice. I have found someone else, he had said, as if Evelyn had no voice, no will, no power of her own. He believed she was nothing without him. That belief would be his downfall. Evelyn returned the recorder to its hiding place, her face calm, her decision clear. She would not beg him to stay. She would not cry in public or play the role of the broken wife. She would fight, but not with tears or anger. She would fight with the truth he thought she could never wield. For years she had been Marcus's shadow. Now, with her secret weapon, she was ready to step into the light. Marcus moves out, his departure quick and cruel. He packed his clothes into neat suitcases, leaving behind only silence and the faint smell of his cologne. Evelyn stood by the doorway, watching him go, her face unreadable. He didn't even look back. Within days the world knew. Marcus and Clara began appearing together in restaurants, at company functions, and in photos that spread across social media. He flaunted her as if she were a prize, a shiny replacement for the wife he had discarded. Evelyn became the target of whispers. Neighbors looked at her with pity, lowering their voices when she passed. Friends who once filled her home with laughter now hesitated to call. Some sent short, awkward messages, stay strong, or you'll get through this. But their words felt empty. Even Marcus's colleagues, who had once respected her, now treated her like a forgotten chapter. At night, when the house was too quiet, Evelyn fought tears. Rage simmered in her chest, but so did sorrow. She had built her life around this man, sacrificed her own dreams for him, only to be humiliated and abandoned. Sometimes she wanted to scream, to throw every glass in the house against the wall. Other times, she wanted to curl into herself and disappear. One evening, unable to contain it, she called Marcus and asked to meet him privately. They sat across from each other in his new apartment, where Clara's perfume lingered on the furniture. You didn't have to shame me like that, Evelyn said softly, her hands trembling though she tried to steady them. Marcus leaned back in his chair, his smile arrogant. Evelyn, don't make this harder than it needs to be. You should accept your place. You're nothing without me. Who are you without Marcus Reed? Just a housewife with no career, no influence, no power. Clara is the future. You're the past. His words cut deeper than knives. Evelyn's throat tightened, but she forced herself not to cry in front of him. She stood up, turned toward the door, and said only, "You'll regret underestimating me." For hours afterward she shook with anger. His mockery replayed in her head, and for a moment she felt herself collapsing inside. The weight of betrayal, humiliation, and his cruelty almost broke her. She called Leah, her sister, who came at once. Leah held her tightly and whispered, "You are not powerless, Evelyn. You've always been stronger than you think. Don't let his words define you." Evelyn buried her face in Leah's shoulder and let the tears flow. But when they stopped, something else remained. A quiet strength, sharper than before. Meanwhile, Marcus was focused on the biggest moment of his career. His company was preparing for a massive merger, one that would place him in a position of greater power and wealth. The board of directors watched him closely and Richard, his boss, pushed him to present a spotless image. For Marcus, everything depended on this deal. His reputation, his rise, even his relationship with Clara, all tied to this moment of glory. Evelyn knew it. She read the news, saw the business articles praising Marcus's leadership, and smiled bitterly. They didn't know what she knew. They didn't hear the late-night calls she had recorded, the laughter between Marcus and Richard as they spoke of bribes and false reports. She kept replaying the files, her heart racing with every word. She realized she had two battles to fight, the personal and the professional. The affair had destroyed her marriage, but the corruption could destroy Marcus's empire. If she moved carefully, she could take back her dignity and bring him down where it hurt most, his career. Still, the risk was heavy. If she revealed the recordings too soon, Marcus could twist the story, paint her as a bitter, vengeful ex-wife. If she miscalculated, she might end up ruining herself, too. She could lose the sympathy of her friends, her security, even her safety. Clara, too, would be dragged into the storm. The young mistress believed she was stepping into a life of riches and power, but if Evelyn struck, Clara would find herself standing beside a ruined man. At night, Evelyn sat at her desk, listening to the recordings again, writing notes, studying every detail. She thought of Marcus's sneer, his words, "You're nothing without me," and she whispered to herself, "I'll show you who I am." Her plan was forming slowly, carefully. She would not rush. She would not fight Marcus with emotion, but with precision. He had humiliated her in public, but she would return the favor when the time was right. Not by screaming, not by pleading, but by exposing the truth he thought was buried forever. The tension grew inside her with each passing day. The world still saw Evelyn as the abandoned wife, pitted and powerless. Marcus still saw her as a shadow. But she knew something they didn't. The moment she chose to act, everything he had built could collapse. And Evelyn was waiting for the perfect moment. At the follow-up corporate party where Marcus expects to shine with Clara at his side, the ballroom glitters with chandeliers and the sound of clinking glasses. The air hums with energy. Tonight is meant to be Marcus's night, the celebration of the big merger, the moment where he cements his reputation as the rising star of the company. Clara walks beside him in a silver dress, her hand tightly wrapped around his arm. She smiles like she has already won. Marcus shakes hands with directors, laughs loudly, and soaks up the praise. His eyes shine with pride, as though the world now belongs to him. Clara whispers in his ear, tossing a quick, triumphant glance at the crowd. She looks smug, as if she already wears Evelyn's crown. Then the doors open and Evelyn walks in. The room shifts, conversations pause, eyes turn. She wears a simple black dress, elegant and understated, her posture straight. She does not look broken. She does not look weak. Instead, she carries herself with a calm confidence that unsettles Marcus the moment he sees her. His smile falters, but only for a second. He quickly regains his charm, laughing too loudly as he guides Clara forward. "Oh, look who decided to show up," he says, his voice dripping with mockery. "My ex-wife. You must be lost, Evelyn. This is a celebration, not a pity party." Clara smirks, leaning closer to Marcus, her eyes shining with cruel delight. But Evelyn doesn't flinch. She walks slowly through the crowd, meeting the curious eyes that follow her. Then she approaches the stage where Marcus has been holding court, and she asks calmly, "May I say a few words?" The request stuns the room. Murmurs ripple. Marcus laughs loudly, trying to cover his unease. "Oh, Evelyn, this isn't really the time. We don't want to bore the guests with old wounds, do we?" But Evelyn doesn't move away. Her voice remains steady. "Just a few minutes." Marcus rolls his eyes, his arrogance rising again. "Fine," he says mockingly. "Ladies and gentlemen, my ex-wife apparently wants to give a speech. Try not to fall asleep." Clara laughs softly at his side. Evelyn steps onto the stage and takes the microphone. Her hands are steady, her eyes sharp. She scans the room, seeing directors, colleagues, family, all waiting, expecting a scene of desperation. Instead, she presses a small button on the device she carries. A voice fills the room. Marcus's voice. "Richard, the money's already moved. No one will ever know. The numbers are covered." The room goes still. Every guest freezes. Then Richard's voice follows, low and unmistakable. "As long as the board believes the reports, The merger goes through. And Marcus, you'll get your promotion. Gasps echo through the hall. Faces turn toward Marcus. The color drains from his face, his confident mask cracking. Clara's smile vanishes, replaced by shock and fear. Evelyn lets the recording play for a few more seconds. Marcus's laughter echoing, before she stops it. She raises her eyes to the stunned crowd. Her voice is calm, almost too calm. I thought everyone should hear the truth. This isn't only about a marriage betrayed. It's about lies, fraud, and corruption that reach the top of this company. Marcus stumbles forward, his voice panicked. This is nonsense. She's twisting things. She's bitter, she's angry. Don't listen to her. But the room is no longer his. Directors whisper furiously. Guests exchange shocked glances. Reporters in the corner raise their phones to capture the moment. Evelyn holds the microphone tighter. And in case you think this is just a bitter wife story, I should tell you. These recordings have already been sent to the board of directors and the authorities. The words drop like a hammer. Gasps turn into a storm of voices. People murmur, point, some already pulling out their phones to confirm what she said. Marcus's eyes widen with horror, his arrogance crumbling into fear. Clara grips his arm, her face pale. No, no, no. Marcus stammers, sweat gathering on his forehead. You don't know what you've done, Evelyn. You'll ruin me, us. Evelyn looks at him, her face calm, her voice steady. You ruined yourself, Marcus. All I did was make sure the world saw it. The crowd begins to shift away from him. The director's eyes are sharp and cold, their murmurs filled with words like investigation, suspension, and fraud. Reporters rush forward, their cameras flashing. Clara takes a step back from Marcus, her hand slipping from his arm as if she suddenly realizes he is no longer her prize but her downfall. Marcus tries to reach for her, but Clara pulls away, her face twisted with panic. I didn't sign up for this, she whispers harshly, before disappearing into the crowd. Evelyn stands tall, her expression steady, watching the man who once humiliated her now face his own destruction. The party that was supposed to be his grand triumph has turned into his public downfall. For the first time in years, she feels the weight lift from her shoulders. She does not smile, she does not gloat. She simply lowers the microphone, steps off the stage, and walks past Marcus as if he is nothing more than a shadow fading in the light. Marcus faces immediate suspension and public disgrace. The board of directors acts quickly, stripping him of his duties while an investigation begins. News spreads fast. Headlines expose his corruption, his arrogance, and his fall from grace. Colleagues who once praised him now avoid his calls. Friends vanish, pretending they were never close. His empire, built on lies, collapses in front of him. Clara deserts him almost overnight. The moment she realizes the money and power are gone, she packs her things and disappears without a word. She blocks his number, leaves his apartment, and is soon seen on the arm of another wealthy man. Marcus, once so confident, now sits alone, his pride shattered, his name ruined. Evelyn watches from a distance, not with glee but with calm detachment. For the first time in years, she is not in his shadow. The pitying eyes that once followed her are gone. Instead, people look at her with respect, even admiration. Some whisper about her courage, others about her cleverness. She does not seek their approval, but she feels the shift. She is no longer the abandoned wife but the woman who stood her ground. She moves forward with quiet determination. Filing for divorce, she does not plead or beg. She comes prepared, with lawyers and leverage. The recordings and Marcus's scandal give her power in negotiations. She ensures financial stability for herself, refusing to be left with nothing after years of sacrifice. Marcus, broken and desperate, can only agree. The day she signs the divorce papers, Evelyn feels a strange mix of emotions. There is sadness for the years she lost, for the love she once believed in, but there is also relief. At last she is free. Healing does not come all at once. There are still nights when the house feels too quiet, when memories return uninvited. But Evelyn is not alone. Leah stays close, reminding her of her worth, making her laugh again, and helping her see life beyond Marcus. Together, they share meals, take long walks, and rebuild the bond that had been pushed aside during Evelyn's years of sacrifice. Slowly, Evelyn begins to dream again. She returns to writing, the passion she once gave up for Marcus's career. Words flow onto the page, not for anyone else but for herself. She starts imagining a life that belongs to her, one filled with choices she makes, not one she surrenders. For the first time in a long while, Evelyn sees her reflection in the mirror and recognizes herself, not as Marcus's wife, not as the woman he humiliated, but as Evelyn. Strong, free, whole. The world may remember Marcus for his scandal, but Evelyn will remember herself for surviving it, for rising from it, and for finally stepping out of the shadows into her own light. Evelyn sits alone after the storm, reflecting quietly. The house is calm, the air still. No more hurried footsteps, no angry words, no mocking laughter. Just silence. The kind of silence that feels like peace rather than loneliness. She leans back in her chair, a cup of tea in her hands, and lets her thoughts settle. She does not think of Marcus with bitterness anymore. His downfall was his own making. She had simply revealed the truth. Tonight, she does not feel the rush of revenge. What she feels is relief, like a heavy weight has finally lifted off her chest. For years, she lived in someone else's shadow, bending herself to fit the life Marcus wanted. But now, for the first time, she is free. Her dignity, once stripped from her in front of friends and strangers, is restored. She no longer feels like a ghost of herself. She feels real, present, alive. She thinks of Leah, of their laughter in recent weeks, of how love and support helped her through the darkest nights. She thinks of the words she has begun to write again, the quiet joy of returning to the dreams she once buried. The road ahead is still uncertain, but Evelyn is not afraid. She knows she can build a new life, one chosen by her, not forced upon her. She knows she will never again be silent while someone tries to erase her worth. She sets the teacup down, takes a deep breath, and whispers into the quiet room, "Never again will I be silent." And in that simple promise, Evelyn feels the power of a new beginning. EBUBE. Two Hearts, thanks so much for staying till the end. Don't forget to like, drop a comment, and hit that subscribe button. See you next time. Sparkles.